That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
All right, so we are going to be doing something a little bit differently here, where I'm going to be completely honest. Over the past 2 weeks or so, I have not had the time in my own dynasty leagues to go through and start sending out trade offers, even though I desperately need to start doing that because we have teams with some massive team needs because, you know, up until this point, I really don't worry about team need at all, and I just try to continue to stack rosters with value. But I've been too lazy. I haven't had the time to send out my own trade offers. So we are going to be going to the Flock Patreon leagues, and I'm going to be pulling a few trade offers that have recently happened within the past 2 weeks. Now, I will say, we did not get permission to do this, but I'm assuming if you're playing in a Flock Patreon league, you're fine with me talking about your trade on the channel if I don't mention your name. So that's exactly what we are going to be doing here. But anyway, before we get into it, please go down there, drop that like, leave a comment letting me know who you think wins with these trades, because all three of these trades I think are pretty damn close. So I'd really want to hear your opinion. And if for whatever reason you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and have not subscribed to the channel by now, fix your life, go down there, subscribe. But yeah, that should be it. Let's dive into the Flock 14 over there on Patreon. And this format, just for a quick heads up for everyone, is going to be like a hyper flex format. I mean, you have very little starting lineup requirements across all positions, and then you just have a ton of flex spots. So you have to start one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, one super flex, and then 6 additional flex spots. So here you really have to understand that a player like a Nyheim Hines, a player just say like a Damian Williams, they're going to be worth a lot less in this format because trying to chase a running back 2 season just simply is not worth the effort. It's simply not really what it's cracked up to be when you have to start 2 running backs, because if you have a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, hell, I mean, GG, you don't have to worry about starting anybody else there the rest of the season, and you just have to worry about who you're going to be putting in your flex spots. But anyway, this exact trade was Baker Mayfield, Chris Godwin, and Tyler Lockett for Trevor Lawrence. Now, this is a very intriguing deal because I'm going to be the first one to say I hate Baker Mayfield in fantasy. Now, I know a lot of people are going to get mad at that because for whatever reason, if you talk bad about a Cleveland Browns player, I mean, people will be in your mentions. People will just be trying to destroy you. But here with Baker Mayfield, I can't get behind his dynasty draft price, any draft that I'm in, because you look at the profile of Baker Mayfield. And this is a pocket passer quarterback that is never going to have access to elite rushing upside in the slightest. I mean, this is a quarterback that can't even run for 300 rushing yards in a season. I mean, if he had a Ryan Tannehill type rushing season, that would be best case scenario. That would be career high setting for Baker Mayfield in the rushing department. And we already know that even with you not having a Lamar Jackson, rushing is still so important at the quarterback position, because if you can get a quarterback that has the potential to just rush for 20 yards a game and additionally get 4 to 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, you do some quick math, 20 yards a game turns out to be 32 fantasy points. Then you throw in the fact that if he can get 5 additional rushing touchdowns, that's an additional 30. So all of a sudden, you're adding on 62 fantasy points to whatever total just by a little bit of rushing. You don't have to be Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Cam Newton. I mean, just by giving you the baseline of a Ryan Tannehill, you're getting the additional 60 points in fantasy. Now, that equates over to 15 passing touchdowns in fantasy. That is absolutely massive, and you cannot overlook that given the fact that it's essentially free. It's on top of whatever passing volume that you're having. So with Baker Mayfield, he does not have access to any of that. So he's kind of behind the 8 ball already. So what you're having to look for is you're having to look for elite level numbers with passing volume. We understand that in Aaron Rodgers, a prime Tom Brady, a prime Drew Brees, a prime Peyton Manning, yes, they can be elite fantasy producers. They can be top 5 at the position. But what do they also have to be? They also have to be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL with their passing yards and their passing touchdowns. So if you don't have access to that when you have no rushing upside in the slightest, what exactly are we talking about here? I think the ceiling for Baker Mayfield this upcoming season is going to be a high-end quarterback 2 in fantasy, because this is someone that averaged less passing yards than Drew Lock last year. You throw in the fact that Really, there have been no additions to this Cleveland Browns offense outside of Anthony Schwartz. We don't really even know what Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be looking like at the beginning of the season. So Baker Mayfield, I am really just completely off of him in fantasy football. I understand he can be a very good NFL quarterback, but still a very bad fantasy asset. Now, on the other hand, so with Trevor Lawrence, while yes, he is a key piece in this deal, while yes, he is by far and away the best player you're going to be looking at, and it's not even close. On that side of the trade, you're only getting one player in return. And what we have to point out with this format is you have to start 11 guys, and 6 of them are going to be flex spots. Now, if you go and pull up my own Flock team in this Flock Patreon League, you're going to find that I loaded up on wide receivers. I mean, I just got Elijah Moore, Terrace Marshall. I have so many of those young wide receivers that we plan on throwing in those flex spots. In depth is actually very crucial in a format like this, given the fact that you have to start 11 players every single week. So with Trevor Lawrence, while yes, he is a significantly better quarterback in fantasy than Baker Mayfield, he is someone that does have that upside to just be a limited rusher at the quarterback position. You could see him giving you 20 rushing yards a game, as well as going through and picking up 4 rushing touchdowns in the season. He doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson, but he has access to that. And also with Trevor Lawrence, I don't think anybody's going to argue against the fact that he has the upside to be a top 5 passing quarterback in the NFL at some point in his NFL career. So if you combine those two things, Trevor Lawrence can easily be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy, given the fact that he's also a rookie. He has that long-term job security. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a cornerstone dynasty asset. I am just unsure if we can get past the idea of trading away 2 additional wide receivers when I really want to be placing a premium on the wide receiver position in this format. Because, I mean, Chris Godwin and Tyler Lockett are going to be guys in your starting lineup each and every week. So I'll say if you're playing in a league where you only start 8 guys and it's a 10-man format, I mean, these are leagues that we talk about all the time with Patreon podcasts, breaking down your own teams. I mean, in a format like that, then yeah, I am fine taking someone like Trevor Lawrence in this deal. But in this Flock Patreon League in particular, when you have to start 11 players every single week, I think that maybe has me going with the package, even though I hate Baker Mayfield in Dynasty. I hate him in fantasy. Yes, he can be a good quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and he can be a very bad fantasy asset at the same time. But please, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below, because this is a very close deal. Now, let's go to another Flock League. This is also a Flock League that got kicked off this offseason. It's going to be the Flock 13. And here, it's a completely different format, as all of them pretty much are. You start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, 3 additional flex spots, and a super flex league. But we need to point out this is a tight end premium format, and really the only players moved in this deal are going to be tight ends in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith getting traded for TJ Hawkinson. Now, there were also some other players that were just end of roster guys. I mean, just complete trash in this deal that I don't think really changed the value at all. So we're not going to even look at them. We're just going to be looking at these core pieces in the trade. So essentially, I mean, you have a team moving on from TJ Hawkinson, a top 5 tight end in Dynasty. I don't think anybody's going to argue against TJ Hawkinson being the number 5 tight end in Dynasty at this point. But you're moving him for a pairing in New England that we really don't know what to expect. I mean, I think right now, if we understood how the snaps and how the targets were going to break down between Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, one of these guys has to be a great value in Dynasty. One of them has to be a great value in just fantasy leagues, given the fact that there are so many targets available in this New England Patriots offense. And while I wasn't necessarily in on any of the pass catchers before they drafted Mac Jones, and I'm not the biggest fan of Mac Jones in the world because very similar to Baker Mayfield, we understand that he has no rushing upside in the slightest. So if he wants to be an instant contributor in fantasy, he has to be near the top of the NFL and what he's doing from a passing volume standpoint, which we can't necessarily get behind, but we understand that he is not going to be vulturing rushing touchdowns away at the goal line like a Cam Newton. We understand that he is also most likely going to have the passing volume in this offense be a little bit higher than Cam Newton would regardless. So add on these things and you have to get a little bit more excited about the passing options in New England. So both Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith do become appealing. And like we previously stated, I mean, this is a start 11 league, which is 1.5 points per reception for the tight end position. So that makes it where you can consider putting some tight ends in the flex. I mean, if Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith are both top 12 tight ends somehow, then all of a sudden you have a guy that you can play in your tight end slot and you have a guy you can play in the flex at the same time. But you also are kind of hedging your bets here and going, you know what? Well, maybe Jonnu Smith is just used primarily as a blocker. Hunter Henry is the guy running all the routes at the tight end position. Well, you got that right. And you can say the same thing if you just reverse the scenarios. So there are a lot of things at play with the tight end situation in New England right now, and monopolizing that situation isn't the best strategy. It's not the worst. I don't want to dive into that too much because we can see how it maybe works out for both players. But moving TJ Hockenson for both assets, I really can't get behind. Now, I am all for going and getting depth in a format where you have to start 11 players. But with TJ Hockenson, I mean, I think he projects so much better for this upcoming season than either one of Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. And you throw in the fact that he is only going into year 3. And we know that if he does take that leap forward, like most people are projecting him to, I mean, he's being drafted as the tight end 5 in both dynasty and redraft leagues at the moment. Then all of a sudden, we know that TJ Hockenson in his own dynasty value, it's going to go up next year, especially in a tight end premium format where maybe he's viewed as a tight end that you actually construct a team around. Maybe he's viewed in the same light that you have a guy like a George Kittle, a Darren Waller. And I know that's crazy to say at this moment, but it's definitely possible. So I think we just want to go with the better player here in TJ Hockenson, because you can't guarantee yourself that Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith are 100% locks for the flex spots, like we said with the last trade in both Chris Godwin and Tyler Lockett. So now let's go to our last trade we are going to be talking about here. And this is another Baker Mayfield deal. So we don't want to be looking too much at just Baker. But here it was a whole package to go and get Josh Allen. Very similar to what we had with that first trade in Trevor Lawrence. This trade in the Flock 13 was Baker Mayfield, Javonte Williams, Chase Claypool, and Jalen Reagor for Josh Allen in just some trash. Now, I will say this is the same format where you have to start 11 players. You have to start 3 flex, you have to start 2 running backs, and you have to start 3 wide receivers. So understanding that, I mean, I think you do view both Javonte Williams and Chase Claypool in a high light, but Josh Allen, in my opinion, is going to be so far out ahead of what you're expecting from Baker Mayfield. Jalen Reagor at this point is just a throw-in piece for me. I mean, Jalen Reagor, someone I understand has been getting hype in Dynasty lately, mainly by the people who were way too high on him last year. The people who were drafting him over Justin Jefferson last year, they're coming out going, oh, Jalen Reagor, a good buy low candidate. No, Jalen Reagor, not a good buy low candidate. Someone that had a very bad rookie season. Then his team went out there and traded for Devonta Smith with the number 10 pick. And on top of that, they are rolling with the quarterback that shouldn't project to have a ton of passing volume. So Jalen Reagor, just a throw in for me at this point. It's essentially Josh Allen for Baker Mayfield, Javonte Williams, and Chase Claypool. And I'm a massive Javonte Williams fan, but I think in this trade in particular, I think we may prefer just going with Josh Allen. It is so close though, and so much of this has to do with your team construction. That's why I picked these trades, because I think there's not a clear winner from really at least this one that we're talking about right now. But please let me know what y'all are thinking in the comment section. Now, I lied. Let's do one more trade here. And this one is very interesting. I understand that a lot of people aren't going to understand it, but this is from Chinder. Okay, so if you were unable to watch this live Patreon startup auction, Chinder came out and he dominated us. I mean, he made me look like an idiot. He showed exactly what I am. And Chinder walked away with a team that was unbelievable because he identified that players were going way too high earlier in the auction. They were being bid on too much. And he waited until the end where he was getting a guy like a Mac Jones, a T. Higgins, a Brandon Ayuk for literally nothing, for almost free. So he has a juggernaut team, not necessarily too much talent at the top, but just a ton of guys that go in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7 of Dynasty Startup drafts. He got them at massive values. So he went along and he traded away Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, and David Montgomery for Dalvin Cook. And I will say, in a vacuum, given this league, you have to start 11 players. I think we definitely prefer the Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, and David Montgomery side with all the league settings considered. But for Chinder in particular, I think it did make sense to go through when you had such a strong team. And while literally you had 20 guys you could rely on starting every single week, at that point, it can't hurt you too much to go up there and pay for that top end asset. I will say, I think you kind of made a mistake here by going through and making this trade right now. I understand that it was just probably an itchy figure thing where you want to look at your roster every day and go, how can I get this better today, better today, better today, better today? Because I promise you, in this league, myself included, there are some very bad teams that are most likely going to be looking to have a fire sale for those younger players halfway through the year. And who knows, maybe if you just waited until week 3 and then that team that had Dalvin Cook literally had nothing, you could have traded them Devonta Smith and just a T. Higgins to get Dalvin Cook in return and get a much cheaper price on him. But of course, that is just speculation. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope y'all enjoy this video. And of course, if you want to play in a Flock Patreon league, the link down there to join the Flock on Patreon will be there. And yeah, that's it. Drop a like, leave a comment, let me know what you liked in these trades, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all in the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone joining the Flock over there on Patreon. In Castro, Brian, Mike, Jay, Samuel, Billy, Rocky, Bailey, Zachary, and Andrew. Thank you, my dudes.